All right, so I was just trying to have my magic hour, which is my weekly live coaching, and I was trying to do it over on Facebook Live, which is where I did my one last week, trying for number 2 this week, and I kept getting the boot. So I'm now doubling up on my technological attempts here, and I've got Instagram Live going. I'm also trying to make a recording so that I can upload it to Facebook. Anyway, hi, I'm Dina Balicki. I'm a transformational coach. I live out here in Joshua Tree, California. It is a beautiful day in the desert, and and this is Magic Hour number 2. So you're welcome to ask questions as we dig in. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we're about to dig into, and pardon any technical difficulties. Today has not been my day so far. I do live in a rural area, and it is Mercury retrograde, so we're going to do the best that we can. So, like I said, Magic Hour is it's just that. It's magical time where we get to connect every week and dig in on a particular issue. Last week, I really dug in on clarity, on how to create the conditions for clarity, that it's not just something you stumble upon and you're like, oh, I'm clear. Oh, great. Like my life is, I understand what I'm doing and what my purpose is. It's something that you have to actually create the space for. So this week, what we're going to talk about, and like I said, you're welcome to ask questions or comments, but the topic this week is how to build a healthy relationship with your inner guidance. And that is, that's certainly right in alignment with how do I find more purpose and meaning in my life. Yes, clarity is necessary, but part of clarity is being able to tap into your own inner guidance system, right? Your intuition. And what comes in the way of us being able to be in touch with our intuition a lot of times is that we feel like we've got battling voices in our heads, right? Like, oh, this voice is telling me to do this. This one's telling me to do that. I don't know what to do. So I'm going to give you a few steps to begin to navigate that more clearly. And there's also on my website for you, there's a free little, what I'm calling your inner guidance emergency kit. So if you just go to danabalicki.com/ego, you'll be able to get that emergency kit that will help you with steps anytime you're feeling like, oh, I don't know what to do, to help you navigate and make a decision. So, internet, various sources on the interwebs estimate that we make 35,000 remotely conscious decisions a day. 35,000. I mean, that's a lot of decisions, right? And I don't think if someone asked you how many decisions did you make today, you would never say 35,000. However, that's that we're constantly making them, and this, the study says remotely conscious, and that we make, what was it I just read this morning, a Cornell University study says that we do 226.7, I don't know what a 0.7 decision is, but 226.7 decisions just on food a day, right? So that's a lot. And with all those decisions, sometimes we know, we're like, oh yeah, I know what to do here, or I know what I want to eat, or I know whatever the thing is, right? And sometimes even with we mull on the decision, we talk to people about it, we grind on it, we really weigh all the options, and we still get stuck. Right? Sound familiar? Probably. How to make how do we make the right choice, and how do we move forward with confidence, and how do we move forward with clarity, right? Super important. My guess is that you have moments when you get stuck, and you get stuck in trying to figure out what's the right thing for you, whether it's something super benign, or somewhat benign, you know, what do I want to eat today? Or when do I want to eat today? Or when am I leaving my desk to eat today, right? See how all the decisions start to add up. Or like, how do I, you know, I really want to express myself to my loved one, or I want to ask for a raise, right? Something that's a little bit more important and weighty. And how do we do, you know, like, how do we begin to make the decisions around like, okay, like, well, how do I want to do that? How do I want to express myself? Can I express myself, right? What do I want to say? How do I want to say it, right? And then we get all the like little battling voices. So the first step to building a healthy relationship with your inner guidance, I've got my little notes here, because last week when I talked about clarity, I talked for a full hour, and well, I had a lot of fun, and I hope you all did too. I'm gonna make it a little shorter this week. So, we're gonna move through a few steps. So the first step is to identify the voices, right? We gotta ID, we gotta know who's talking in there, right? And there's certainly more in-depth work that I do with my coaching clients around, you know, inner archetypes and working with inner children. And that's super valuable work. And, you know, even just being able to like identify some of the basic like parts of our psyche that are operating is going to be super, super helpful when you're making decisions. So the two voices, right, like sort of, the two ones that are often pulling, right, are our intuition and our ego. So here's how to identify them, because sometimes we're not sure, right? We like want to make a decision and then we hear the inner voice and we're like, I don't know, is that the right voice? Is that the right one to listen to? And the ego is always going to be, like, I always think of it like a party, right? And I don't know, I always envision this loft party I went to, like on the Lower East Side. I don't know, it was just some random party in New York that I went to years ago, and they had like a hot tub on the roof and this crazy elevator. And anyway, so that's what I imagine. But here's the helpful part, is that the ego is going to be like, you enter the party, right? Elevator opens, you go in, and like there's the guy who's just, I mean, I associate the ego with more of a male, masculine quality. That's just me. It doesn't have to be you. But there's that person who's just like loud, right? And they're just like the loudest. They're like the first one to the party. They take up the space. They're a know-it-all. They're like, this is this, and that is that, and that's how it is. And so when you hear that voice, right, inside of you, right, imagine this, you know, this loud voice inside of you, it's going to be the first voice to show up. It's sort of like the first to your own party, your own decision-making party. It's the loudest. It's really logical. And here's how to, a really great way to discern if that's the voice that's playing, is you're going to feel constricted. Right, you're gonna feel contracted. You're gonna feel like when the ego voice is activated, you're gonna just feel a little bit like, oh, you know, like it doesn't feel that good, right? You can like even just like scan your body when you're trying to make a decision, right? You're making a conscious decision. You're like, okay, I've got a decision to make, and what do I do? And you're trying to like sort of consult your own inner guidance system. And if you feel and you hear a voice and it's, you know, saying like, okay, this is what needs to happen, you want to notice like if it feels sort of constricting, if it feels like, oh, that doesn't feel that great, it doesn't feel very kind, or it doesn't feel, you'll just notice in your body any sense of contraction or constriction, right? So that's the ego. That's going to be the ego. And the intuition is going to feel more like, right, going back to like my party scenario here, the intuition is going to be more like that music that's on in the background. And it's like, ooh, you hear it, like you sort of got that ego is like loud, and you're like, God, I wish that ego would just like be quiet a little bit so I could like hear this song and like feel this. It feels good, and you want to dance, or you want to move, or you just feel it in your body and it feels more expansive. So that's like sort of the energetic body difference, like way to tell whether it's your ego responding to your question, to your inner guidance system, or whether it's the intuition. So Eckhart Tolle, I read a lot of Eckhart Tolle. My husband actually turned me on to him. And, you know, he's lots of great books like The Power of Now and New Earth, totally recommend. But you know, he does a lot of work on the ego, and I find it really fascinating. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful, you know, you can go into like Jungian psychology, which is super trippy and amazing. But I really do like Eckhart Tolle. So if you're feeling like, ooh, I want to know more about my relationship to my ego and like my psyche, Eckhart Tolle could be a cool find for you. So he says, though, that like once you see the ego, once you notice it, right? So if you're using this little inner party scenario like on your own, and you're like, oh, that's the ego right now, that's responding, right? That I feel sort of constricted, right? I'm trying to make a decision. I'm trying to listen to my inner guidance. The voice that's coming up is really logical. It's sort of constricting. You know, I feel it in my body. It's sort of like a know-it-all. This is what we got to do voice, or that's not going to work. You tried that last time, right? So what Eckhart Tolle says is that once you see the ego, once you look at it ceases being the ego, right? It ceases because the ego lives solely in the unconscious, right? The realm of the unconscious. So once you like bring it up, once you bring consciousness to it, and you're like, oh, I see you. Right, you've actually like you sort of you've just like put a stop on it, right? So you've gone from the unconscious to the conscious, which is a big deal, right? Because we could sort of just live in our unconscious. I mean, we operate from our unconscious a lot, right? So the more that you can begin to notice the difference between, you know, when you're you know, when the unconscious is playing, then you're going to, you know, then you can actually start to bring consciousness to it and like, and make change, right? So that's the whole point here is, you know, we're trying to, I'm here right now, magic hour, number 2, trying to help you see the path to building a healthy relationship with your inner guidance, right? So the first one, the step 1 is to identify the voices, right? Between the difference between your ego and your intuition, right? And so once you've identified like what is it that's playing out, is it the ego or you know, or can you hear your intuition? The next step, right? Like once we've identified, because normally it's going to be the ego, because the ego always responds first and loudest, right? So the ego is going to always be there when you're trying to make a decision. It's going to like show up and be like, well, this is what you got to do. And like I said earlier, we make 35,000 remotely conscious decisions a day. So your ego is playing out a lot. So the second step, right? Like once you've identified like, oh, okay, I see the ego, right? I see the ego playing out. I hear it. I feel it in my body. It feels sort of constricting. What you want to do, because now that you've seen it, you've brought it from the unconscious up to the conscious, right? Meditation master, mindfulness master Thich Nhat Hanh calls it moving from the basement to the living room, right? So we bring a seed thought from the basement up to the living room. So we're bringing something from the unconscious up to the conscious, right? Which is a really powerful act, because when we bring our thoughts from the unconscious up to the conscious, that's the only place that we're actually able to make change, right? So once we're bringing some consciousness to it, the second step is to then identify the pattern. Sorry about that. So the second step is to then notice what the pattern is. Like if you're looking at the ego and you're like, ooh, I see you. I'm looking at you, and I can see that that's what's happening here. I can see how my ego is showing up, right? Maybe it's like, maybe you notice that like you're trying to compete, or you feel like you need to like impress someone or prove yourself, right? So this is step 2, is you want to see the pattern. You want to you want to see the urge. You want to see the wound ultimately, right? So that once you can notice, like, okay, it's the ego. I see how the ego is showing up here. I'm now conscious of it. It's no longer the ego. Now it's just an opportunity to understand myself better, to see what this urge is that's like, you know, that's trying to guide my decision making, right? That's trying to like guide my system, my inner GPS here. So once you see the pattern, or the urge or the wound, right? You notice what it is, like, oh, right, I'm really trying to prove myself to this person here. I'm really, you know, I feel like I need to compete. I'm worried that maybe they're better than me, or I'm, any number of things, right? Like that we do on a, you know, probably semi-conscious and unconscious basis every day. Is we, you know, we act from the place of ego. So we're bringing it up to the light, we're looking at it, and now you have the opportunity to understand the pattern that's playing out for you. And chances are, like, this is not a fun pattern. This pattern probably sort of sucks and feels bad, right? Hence the constriction. Right? See how we're starting to notice in our body, notice in our mind, like, oh, right, this is just a signal, right, from my inner guidance system, my inner GPS, right? And when something feels bad, it means it's not aligned with the truth of who you really are. Right? And when something feels good, it means that it is aligned with the truth of who you really are. So when we notice something, we notice our decision-making patterns, and we notice the inner voices, and we notice that, you know, we've got a voice that's going that doesn't feel so great, then you get to actually make an empowered decision, right? But all that was happening in the background, all of that was happening unconsciously before. So now that we're conscious of it and looking at it, this is the opportunity for transformation, right? This is your opportunity to build a healthy relationship, because you can't have a healthy unconscious relationship. I mean, think about it like in your life, right? The relationships that are probably going the best in your world are the relationships that you really think about, and you really put time and energy into, and you connect with that person, and you work to like understand what they want and need, and you relate to them what you want and need, and you show up for each other in loving, respectful, reciprocal ways, right? A lot of times we have unconscious relationships with our parents. So we just keep playing out the same, you know, the same old like battles, right? Unconsciously, like you go to their house for the holidays or something, and like within 5 minutes you're like, oh my God, like you're triggering me so hard, right? And like they're probably getting triggered by you too, and then you just do this. So that's an unconscious relationship. And so if you have an unconscious relationship with your own inner guidance, you're just going to constantly be playing these little old painful patterns and wounds out all over the place, right? So how to, like, on the path of like how to have a healthy relationship with your own inner guidance is to like bring awareness, right? And see what's actually happening. So I walked you through step 1, which is identify the voices, the difference between the ego and the intuition. The ego feels constricting, the intuition feels expansive. Step 2 is to really then, once you've noticed like how the ego is showing up, because the ego is going to like constantly be showing up, that once you see the ego and look at it, it ceases being unconscious. So it ceases being the ego. It's now just the revelation of the old pattern, right? Some old painful pattern or wound or urge. And so that's step 2. So step 3 is to like release the grip, right? Once you see it, and you can consciously be like, maybe I don't want to keep acting that old pattern out over and over again, right? And certainly, like, you know, when I do my coaching work with my clients, like, we do really deep work on release, right? On how to release. But one way that I think could be really helpful and simple for you right now, and I know because it's been always really helpful and simple for me, is to, like, in the noticing of the pattern, see if you can just part of the release is going to happen in the noticing, and like, oh, I see that, right? I see that old pattern. I see that old wound. I'm trying to prove myself because I think I'm unlovable, or I believe I'm unlovable, or I'm not worth it, or I'm going to be a failure, or I'm all alone in the world, or right? There's a lot of limiting beliefs, core limiting beliefs that we all share. So you are not alone, right? So step 3 is to see if you can just, like, once you're aware of it, to just sort of like almost laugh at it. Just be like, hey, I see you again. There you are again. Okay. And just, like, see if you can, like, laugh at it. Just be like, that's funny. That happened again, right? Like, that showed up again. And that is, you know, if we go back to my original, like, party scenario, it would be like, if you just, that loud guy, right, or the loud person, the ego, right, that if you left the party and you went to another party, and, like, 10 minutes later, they walk in the door, and you could be like, oh God, I hate that, and you could grind on it and, like, have all these, like, really intense feelings about it. Or you could be like, oh my God, hi, right? Like, that's so much more powerful and diffusing, because you're not energetically, like, binding yourself to that person because you're like, oh, I hate that person, I don't want to see them. You're sort of like, oh yeah, that person. He, like, sucks up all the air in the room. Hi, good to see you. Okay, bye. Right? Like, that is you not creating an energetic cord, right? The second part of just, like, recognizing, going, oh my God, really? Okay, bye. Hi, wave, keep it moving. Right? The first way of just, like, oh God, I hate that guy, that he's always so this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, you're creating an energetic cord, right? So we don't want that. We don't want you to consistently create energetic cords of connection to your old patterns, right? We want you to start snipping and severing. So a way to do that is step 3 is to release your grip. Now, what's going to happen in step 3, what's really common, is once you notice the old pattern, you are going to have an instantaneous reaction to beat yourself up about it, and to be like, oh God, I suck. I can't believe I'm still working on that. I can't believe that came up again. Haven't I done that enough? Haven't I noticed that enough? Haven't I done enough work around that, or whatever it is? Or like, oh, I always do that. Whatever the, like, internal thing is, that is immediately that really sneaky little ego grabbing you back into the unconscious, because that's an unconscious reaction, right? So the unconscious reaction of beating yourself up is just taking you right back to the ego, right? Taking you right back down into the unconscious. So you might feel that desire to beat yourself up a little, and I want you to just, like, whoa, okay, oh, I see you, right? It's again that, like, okay, I'm noticing you, I'm seeing you, right? So it's recognition is a huge part of this work. Recognition is a huge part of your growth. And the more you can recognize what's happening and then be like, oh, I see that pattern, and not attach to it, not make it mean, like, oh, you're like a weak, bad person, or stupid, or unlovable, or, you know, not getting caught up in the story, you actually get that's like freedom. Freedom, liberation is available to you when you don't attach. It takes practice. It takes practice, right? And it doesn't mean that, like, these old patterns, you know, you practice, like, this, like, recognition and detachment and waving and laughing at it and releasing your grip. You could do it a million times, and that's going to have a big effect. But that doesn't mean that that pattern will never show up again, right? Like, that one day you just stop having this core wound. No, but the practice of everything that I've been talking about is gonna make it so it's not so powerful. So it shows up, and it shows up for like a few moments as opposed to a few months. And then at one point, the pattern is gonna show up, and you're gonna feel sad because you're gonna remember that you spent years, decades of your life in the pattern unconsciously. And you're just gonna grieve a little bit because you're gonna be like, wow, that's sad, right? But you're also gonna celebrate because you're like, I'm not there anymore, right? I'm not caught completely by that anymore. So, so step 3 is releasing the grip, not beating yourself up, bringing in some self-compassion, okay? Being like, okay, like I see this, I see the pattern, this is important, this is good work, right? I deserve, like, you know, a pat on the back for doing the work, because you do. And we don't celebrate ourselves enough in this culture, right? Like we do like a big project and maybe spend months or years, and then what, at the end of it, we like take ourselves out to dinner, like give me a break, right? We need positive reinforcement to ourselves all the time, right? For like letting ourselves know like, hey, I did a good job, because what that's gonna do is create, that's gonna cultivate confidence, right? You're like, okay, I did, yeah. And then the next time you'll be like, oh, I could do it again, right? It'll create confidence, right? So there's a little brain science loop called the confidence loop, right? So you can even activate that in your own growth. Right? Like, oh, okay, I recognize the pattern, and I noticed it, and I waved to it, and I did that. And so the next time it comes up, you're like, oh, I did that before, I can do it again. Right? See how this works? So step 4 is you're gonna then listen for your intuition. So if you're trying to make a big decision, and eventually you practice this enough and it will get lightning quick and you'll be able to use it and access this all the time, right? But you know, for our purposes here, because we're like moving through steps, and you know, we'll imagine that it's like a bigger decision that you need to make, right? So once you've gone through step 1 of identifying the voices, step 2, seeing the pattern, the old pattern, the wound, step 3, releasing your grip and bringing in some self-compassion. Step 4 is going to be listening for the intuition, right? So then you're like, okay, so I recognize the pattern, I've seen it, I brought it from the unconscious up to the conscious, I released my grip on it. And so then you get to be like, ooh, what's that, right? Like the party image, party metaphor of like, what's that music on in the background? So then you get to listen for that. I'm like, okay, so what would feel really good right now? And like, what do I really want to do? Right? And you want to notice like how it feels in your body, because chances are that inner guide, that voice, right? You've made some room for it now by sort of identifying the ego, taking it out of the unconscious, releasing your grip on it. You've made room. Made room to then hear your inner guide, hear your intuition, right? Like the truth. Your intuition is your voice. It's your power. It's connected to the truth of who you really are. So the more that you can engage it, the louder it will get, right? The more connected you will be with it. Just like a relationship with a person in your life, it's like the more you connect, the more you listen to the person, the more connected you become. Right, same thing here. You're just creating the relationship. You're developing the relationship, right? You're feeding it. You're nurturing it. So it will grow and it will get stronger. So you just want to listen for that intuitive voice, because it will be there, and it might be quiet, and you might have to you might not be able to be like running around and doing a million things and hear the intuition. You might have to make a little like space and stillness and quietness. Take your journal out, right? Like whatever it is. You know, hit the mat on your yoga practice if you have one, or meditation practice, just like whatever, I don't know, right? Whatever it is for you. Maybe it's just like sitting with a cup of tea and just like not being on your phone, but like quiet. You got to create some stillness, right? Like, I mean, sometimes I need to create stillness to sometimes really hear my intuition, depending on like what I'm trying to, get clear on. But however you need to do it, or whatever space you need to create for yourself, just some stillness, right? Stillness is super powerful. Stillness, quietude is a super powerful and relatively simple practice, right? It feels a little difficult because we're like, well, how do I make stillness? I've got kids and a job and a this and a that. And it's like, you know, we can all find stillness in some way, right? Like there's a beautiful book out there called Dipa Ma, D-I-P-A-M-A, two separate words, Dipa Ma. And it's a biography about the first woman Buddhist teacher. I believe she was Burmese. It's a really powerful book. Like you read it in the transference, it's literally like Dipa Ma like enters your soul and you are like a blissful Buddha being for days. I mean, that's how I experienced it. But anyway, she used to teach what they were called householders in India, meaning, you know, whether that was like women taking care of the children in the household or, you know, taking care of their own household or taking care of other people's households. And she guided women to enlightenment by first focusing on the breastfeeding, right? The suckle and the rhythm of the baby, you know, their baby feeding, breastfeeding. So you can find stillness and some quietude anywhere. So the step 4 is listen for that intuition. Create some space for the intuition. Sorry, I gotta plug my computer in here, trying to avoid more technical difficulties. Since today seems to be the day for it. Good. Okay. And when the intuition comes up, it's gonna be a process of trusting because you're building a relationship. So you're gonna hear the voice and you're gonna be like, oh my God, is that real? Should I really do it? Right? So your process is gonna be when you connect with that inner guidance, when you connect with that intuition, another little process within the process that can be helpful is you've asked, you've listened, and then the next step is to trust. Trust that you've received the right answer. And then to act on it. So oftentimes we stay in this little loop of like asking and listening. And then we get the answer, we're like, oh, I don't know if I like that answer. Like that doesn't seem like that would work for this reason and that reason. We go, coming back up. Let me go back to the asking, right? And then we just stay in that loop and then we get really confused because it'd be like if you went to a friend and you were asking them for advice and they asked, you know, or a friend asked you for advice. Let's put it this way. So they came to you and they're like, oh, what should I do about this? And you're like, okay, you're asking me for advice. I think you should do this. And then like a couple days later, they came back. They're like, hey, what do you think I should do about this? And you were like, well, I mean, we just talked about it, right? I think you should do this. And they're like, oh, okay. And they came back a couple days later. Hey, what do you think I should do about this? And you're like, okay. Like, really? We're having this conversation again? Like, I already told you what I think you should do. Why do you keep asking me, right? So you could see how that would be a bizarre relationship, right? So that's oftentimes what we do with our inner guidance. And so it gets all like, the circuits get all crossed and we get confused and then we stay in confusion. So the process there is going to be once you've, moved through the, like, recognizing the ego and the old pattern and releasing your grip on it, bringing some self-compassion. You're going to listen for your own intuition and you got to trust it, right? And then you got to act on it, right? Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a big action always. It could be a small action, right? Speech is action. So, just find your way to like affirm with yourself that like you recognize and hear your own intuition and that you can follow it in some way. Okay, so those are the 4 steps. And on my, what I mentioned, I think earlier, but I made so many like initial recordings here on Facebook Live, and I was doing partly Instagram Live as well, that I'm not quite sure if I mentioned it. So I'll say it again. I have this, I made you a gift, do a present. It's an inner guidance emergency kit. So it sort of walks through a little bit differently than what I just did here, but aligned. Sort of the emergency kit of like, okay, I have a decision to make, and like I've got the inner battling voices. How do I navigate, right? So then you can just like pull up this little PDF and be like, okay, 3 steps, and see if that helps. It probably will in some way. And so you can just go to my website, balicki.com/ego, and that will take you to, to the download. You can also go to my blog, danabalicki.com/blog, and the top article, what is it called? I think it's called like Navigate and Make Peace with Your Inner Voices. So that will have a lot of, sort of what we talked about here today, or what I talked about here today, and then they'll have a link to that into the Inner Guidance Emergency Kit for you. So that's there for you. You got it. And one last thing I want to say is that once you go through this process, and you'll go through it hopefully again and again and make it a practice. That when you go through these, steps that I just talked about, and you like recognize the ego and sort of release the grip and self-compassion and begin to listen to your intuition and trust it and act on it, like you actually may feel, I wish I could say you're gonna feel amazing instantly. You may feel a little small. You may feel a little like deflated. Because you aren't acting from that puffed up place of ego, right? So like it might feel a little bit like you're taking the wind out of your sails. But I want you to know that like over time, and I don't know how long this time is for you, right? But could be quite quickly. It could take a little bit, could take a little bit more time. You're gonna realize that you do feel powerful when you listen to the intuition. And that is aligned with who you really are, the truth of who you really are. And you will start to feel more of a sense of like your own inner power and inner strength, and building that, what I was talking about earlier, that confidence loop, right? So initially you might just feel a little smaller, and that might make you feel a little like, oh, is this the right thing? Just know that like expansion and contraction, right, is the way of the universe, is the way of our bodies, right? Our hearts expand, contract. Like everything in nature expands, contracts, right? Like here we are in spring, expansion, contracting, fall and winter, right? Everything goes through this. So just make peace with that. See, just notice it when it comes up. You might want to beat yourself up for feeling like, oh, I'm not doing it right, I'm contracting, or I'm feeling unsure about my choice, or and whatever it is, that's, if you notice that like, wait, I was doing so good and now I feel like I'm not, or I'm not, doing it right, just like be gentle with yourself, right? Don't fall in the hole of unconscious ego beating yourself up. Just know that it's a natural part of the process. So let's be. Okay, my dears. So because now this is a recording that I'm uploading versus a lot Facebook Live, because that wasn't really working. There's no room for questions, but if you if you want to write anything in the comments, I will check back, and I will totally answer anything that comes up. So thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Even with all of the technical difficulties, to have this time with you today. And thank you for joining and watching Magic Hour number 2 every week, Fridays, 11 a.m. Pacific, Magic Hour together. Okay, I will see you next week.